Hi, good afternoon. I'm Steve from Steve's True History and Knowledge channel. Happy Sunday. I'm happy for you to be able to join me today to watch this presentation on my research. Um, this presentation is called The Ancient Persian Gulf, Flooding, Egypt, and the Cushites. This is just in the series of my found in a series of my research. Um, my research mostly consists of Egyptian research and East African research on the origins of religion and its people and stuff like that. But I found it was necessary to include something regarding the Persian Gulf because of the idea that the Sumerians are older than the Sumerian civilization is older than the Egyptian civilization, which I don't believe is true, but they try to make it as it is. So I just felt that it was necessary to throw some comparisons in there and then to also give some information on the Persian Gulf area because Africans are moving in that direction at an early date. So more than likely we find Africans in the Persian Gulf and then they would settle there and they would stay there for thousands of years. So this is the ancient part, beginning about 100,000 years ago and then trying to work our way up to the beginning of the Sumerians. Okay, so that's a little bit of background. So the ancient Persian Gulf, flooding, Egypt, and Cushites. To the right here we have a picture of the Near East. Of importance here for this presentation is you see this large desert area in Arabia. This brown area is desert area, and this area of course remains unoccupied. Okay, the ancient Persian Gulf sites and ice ages. It's supposed that humans have continually occupied Arabia and the Gulf for about 128,000 years or longer. During the ice ages, the ocean water levels decreased, creating a lake in the deepest part of the Persian Gulf and an oasis around it. So if you look at this picture to the right, that's from Jeffrey Rose's book, New Light on Human Prehistory in the Arabo-Persian Gulf Oasis. The dark areas is the remaining water area, so the lake, and then the surrounding lighter areas is the oasis area. So people were able to move in and live into this lighter area, and then surrounding this lake, this deeper area, lake area of the Persian Gulf. The Arabians, or the people from what was to be called Arabia, for thousands of years moved back and forth to this oasis during times of drought. Hunter-gatherers dwelled in this oasis, plus those from Arabia and other people who decided to stay. Okay, ancient Egyptian and Nubian sites. So compare the age of the 128,000 of the Persian Gulf occupation to Egypt, which has many sites from the Achillean industry, which is a like hand axe and cleaver industry. So they made cleavers and hand axes out of stone. and the middle and lower Pleistocene dating from as far back as 750,000 years ago. The banks of the Nile are dotted with these sites, and west across the Sahara has even more of these sites. The map to the right is of the Achillean industry and other sites in Egypt, such as Cargo Oasis, Dakhla Oasis, and Arkin, along with many along the Nile. In Nubia, down here at the bottom, we can see right here at Khartoum, there is a site called Khor Abu Anga, and in the Sahara to the left over here, we see many more sites. So on the map along the Nile, these dots are all sites from the middle Pleistocene. And then we see the Achillean sites over here with the names spelled out of the locations. And some of these sites are as old as 750,000 years ago. So if we want to compare this to Sumer or to the Persian Gulf Oasis, they have records of sites going back to 128,000 years ago. So the Egyptian sites are about six times as old. Okay, the ancient Persian Gulf. From about 10,000 BC to about 7,000 BC, there were only a few sites in the Persian Gulf. Due to droughts, the ancient Arabians settled in the Persian Gulf Oasis, and more than 60 sites have been found dated between 6,000 and 3,000 BCE. As the Persian Gulf filled from the melting glaciers, the people had to move up the banks. By about 5000 BC, on the northern shore, where Sumer would be, they began irrigation. Ancient Persian Gulf and Dilmun Island. Here's an old Arabian map of the roads of travel. And you can see these roads of travel, and all the red dots are ancient Arabian sites. And you can see how the deserts are open with no occupation. And then you see here near the Persian Gulf, near this peninsula here, you can see this is where Dilmun is at, Dilmun Island. The people inhabited the entire shoreline of the Persian Gulf. So all around the coast of the Persian Gulf, even on the side of Iran, there were sites of occupation. And most of the middle of Arabia seems to have been empty prior to 3000 BC. Yeah, we can see all these empty desert areas, and I think that's even still to this day it's like that. It's unlikely that there were any Semites near the Persian Gulf before 3000 BCE. Semites are going to be up here in the north, but they can, if we consider the language family, we don't know the language. I don't know at this time right now the language family distribution of Semites. So it's possible that some of them in Yemen and on the eastern shore of the Red Sea, that these are Semites as well. But it's unlikely that around the Persian Gulf that these people are Semites before 3000 BCE. The island of Bahrain, which was called Dilmun by the Sumerians, means the two seas. Bahrain signifies the joining of Arabia to the island Iwal, which was the ancient name of Bahrain. The word Dilmun was first used during the Uruk 4A period, and Uruk is a culture. There was a city of Uruk in Sumer. the Red Sea and Egypt and Ethiopia. The same thing occurred in the Red Sea when there was an ice age. So the Red Sea during the ice age, also the water was drawn into the glaciers and an oasis appeared around the Red Sea. So people were able to settle in 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 the Red Sea, in the Red Sea area. The water level would decrease, exposing land underneath, and created an oasis-like region which people would flock to. It's thought that once food shortages occurred in this area, the people fled inland to Egypt, Sudan, and Eritrea. Okay, that's interesting that he. It's interesting that Rose says this, that they fled west, not east. So that means that most likely the people that when occupied this oasis were from the west, not the east. It's probably unlikely that very many sites on the east coast of the Red Sea were occupied prior to this, prior to probably like 5,000, 6,000 BCE. During the same time of the water level increases in the Persian Gulf, which happened about 7,000 to 6,000 BCE, people lived in caves in the Tembin region or the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia. So that's over here, northern Ethiopia, near the borders of Eritrea, is where this Tigray region is at. They made rock art and collected local and exotic rocks and minerals, and then they were living in caves. Okay. Sumerians and Cushites before 7000 BC on the lower Kazakhstan plain, just northeast of the Euphrates and Tigris River Valley, where the Sumerians would migrate to. An ancient river plain existed that later became a marsh and estuarine. So that's up here, just northeast of Sumer. By 3500 BCE, it became flooded, and anyone living there would have been flooded out and would have had to move. 3500 BC is the proposed time the Sumerians arrived fully civilized to Sumer. They should be called Kuzites or Cushites, like other scholars have called them, but they could be Nilotic Africans, and Nilotic are Nile River people. So it's possible, and some people have said, and it's thought, and I now think that the Sumerians are actually Nilotic people. So from the people from the Sudan, similar to Nubians, were probably here in Sumer. Cushites are from the Afro-Asiatic language family, the same family as the native Egyptians, and the Semites. The Cushites are originally from eastern Ethiopia and the Sudan Red Sea hills on the coast of the Red Sea. So if we go back here, you can see here Red Sea hills. So on the western coast of Egypt is where the Cushites are from originally. Before that, they were more southern in Eritrea and northern Ethiopia, the northern Ethiopian highlands, and then they moved north. And at the same time, they're probably spreading east into Arabia. If you ever heard of the Cushite Empire, go ahead and look it up, and there's a couple books on it. Okay. The flooding of the Persian Gulf and the Khuzestan Plain It's logical to assume that not only did the Cushites spread northeast through Egypt and into Palestine, but east across the Red Sea and into Arabia, probably using boats. By 10,000 BCE, the glaciers were melting and the seas were rising. And after 6,000 BCE, they were rising at 2.7 meters per day, which is equal to almost 9 feet. Therefore, in one day, the people could easily be flooded out and must move to higher ground. So if you have 9 feet of if the water level's raising in 9 feet in one day, obviously you can't stay there. By 3500 BCE, it's logical to think that Cushites and other Africans are arriving on the Persian Gulf in boats and by land, and they must have arrived well equipped with a hierarchy and soldiers in place. And to the right here, we see a picture of a Nilotic or Nile River man, a Bantu man. Bantu come to East Africa after 3000 BCE. And then we have a picture of a Cushitic man. So Nilotics are on the White Nile. Cushitics are in Ethiopia, the Blue Nile, the top of the Blue Nile, and the Ethiopian highlands, and on the Red Sea hills, and then they're moving into Yemen and the Persian Gulf and a lot of places all over. All of northern Africa, Egypt. They're mostly responsible for populating northern Africa, and then they're moving into Palestine, and then there's the Semitic language and Hebrew languages branch off from them, or it could be earlier, from an earlier Egyptian language. Okay, the Persian Gulf flooding and Oasis. From 128,000 to 120,000 years ago, the ocean levels were near their maximums. Any inhabitants would have lived at the upper levels of the Gulf or in the surrounding mountains. And we would think of this as being very sparse, not very many people at this time. And from 74,000 to 60,000 years ago, droughts were occurring in Arabia, and it's expected that people moved towards the Gulf at this time. The sea levels were low during this time, and the Oasis was exposed in the Gulf. The last glacial maximum was around 16,000 BCE, and the Gulf Oasis was at its maximum exposure. So that means that there was only a lake in the middle of the Gulf, and then all the surrounding area had dried up, but it would have had plants and vegetation and trees and life that grew, because it would have still been a watered area from the rivers draining into it. This happened again from 12,000 to 6,000 years ago, and people would have settled in the Oasis again. So there was probably a period from 16,000 to 12,000 years ago when the Gulf filled back up, and then at 12,000 years ago, the glaciers began to suck up the water again. For the next 6,000 years, people moved back to that Oasis. To the right here, we have a modern picture of the Tigris-Euphrates Valley flooding. Okay, the flooding and settling of the river valleys, beginning at about 6,000 BCE, is when the sea levels really began to rise and flood the Persian Gulf and southern Iraq, which was given the name Sumer. The people had to seek higher ground, and the settlements began to increase in the river valleys at about 5,500 BCE. So now they're settling on the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. and they're creating the um, Al-Ubaid culture, which is the culture that exists before the Sumerians come. And so now they're living. So they moved due to the flooding of the Persian Gulf. They're moving out of the Persian Gulf, and now they're moving up the banks around the Gulf, and then they're moving north into the Euphrates and Tigris River Valley and settling along the rivers. And then now they're starting irrigation. They developed the city of Eridu in Sumer. These people interacted with the people of the Zagros Mountains to the east in Iran, where seashells from the Gulf have been found. The people also built rock shelters along the banks of the Gulf. And to the right here is an example at an ancient site called on the eastern coast of Arabia. It's called Jebel Faya, and it's a rock shelter area where people were living at during these times. Okay, that's the end of this presentation and the bibliography. We have Jeffrey Rose, New Light on Human Prehistory in the Arabo-Persian Gulf Oasis, Current Anthropology, Volume 51. And then we have Agazi Nagash, the Holocene Prehistoric Archaeology of the Tembin region in northern Ethiopia, dissertation from the University of Florida for his PhD. And thank you for watching. I'm Stephen Webb Jr., Steve's True History and Knowledge channel from San Diego, California. Thanks for watching. Take care and have a good day.